On this special edition of Independent Sources from the Shadow of the Towers, do the September 11th attacks still impact the debate on immigration reform in the U.S.?
I think that something like the terror attacks is not what's prevented immigration reform. It may have curtailed it for a few years, but already by 2005, 2006, 2007, I think the country was ready for immigration reform.
And Muslims in Little Pakistan still struggle to recover years after record immigration raids on their community.
U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement, which deals with the deportation, they chartered planes to deport Pakistanis back home.
Those stories and more on this edition of Independent Sources. Welcome to the new season of Independent Sources. I'm Gary Pierre-Pierre. We're coming to you from the top of the CUNY Graduate Center in Midtown Manhattan. This week, we'll focus on how the ethnic and immigrant communities that we cover dealt with and continue to deal with the events of September 11, 2001. The attack didn't start the country's immigration debate, but it altered the course of the discussion for a while. Sarah Pizon speaks to Alan Wernick of CUNY's Immigration Now program about the changes that came after that tragic morning.
What has been the backlash of 9/11?
Well, I think we start by looking at what was going on before 9/11, and the country was really quite close to, under President Bush, to considering very seriously the enactment of a major immigration reform that would have provided a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Vicente Fox, the president of Mexico, was on his way to the United States to meet with President Bush, and that was a major topic that they were going to discuss. And then 9/11 happened, and that pretty much put the end to any immediate discussion of immigration reform. And it didn't really get picked up again until 5 or 6 years later. So that's the legislative impact. The other impact is that immigration immediately got much more strict in evaluating applications and instituted a number of reforms, procedural reforms, that allows them to keep better track of individuals who are in the United States. And I'd say the third thing that happened after that, the Immigration Service had 3 tasks that are now separated. One was the service task, which helps people become U.S. citizens, get green cards, get temporary visas while they're in the United States, extend stays for people who are here. The second task is border control, admitting people into the United States and patrolling our borders. And then the third is ICE, what they call ICE now, which is the Immigration Interior Enforcement. Those 3 activities used to all be under the Immigration and Naturalization Service. No longer. Now under the reorganization, we have 3 different agencies. So I would say those are the 3 main changes since 9/11.
Would you say that the Boston bombings have kind of changed the focus from South border security to Eastern Hemisphere border security?
The Boston bombings haven't really resonated around the immigration issue very intensely. And I think part of the reason for that is that the accused bombers had been in the United States for so very many years. I think they're seen more, although they are immigrants, I think they're sort of more seen as homegrown terrorists, where there is concern, and I think somewhat understandable, is that we don't really keep very good track of people that come here legally. The problem is that we have so many people that come here legally every year, particularly as visitors, to keep track of all those people, to monitor them, to find them if they have overstayed. I think it's going to be close to impossible.
Do you think that 9/11 will always be seen as the changing point for immigration reform?
I think 9/11 will pass as an immigration issue eventually. Already, people really don't talk about, when they talk about immigration reform, they really bring up 9/11 anymore. Let's remember that 9/11 did involve a relatively small number of people. It was a number of years have passed, and I think that we were very close to passing immigration reform, and I think the thing that changed was really the recession. I think the American people are much more mature and sophisticated than they get credit for, and I think that something like the terror attacks is not what's prevented immigration reform. It may have curtailed it for a few years, but already by 2005, 2006, 2007, I think the country was ready for immigration reform. But then the recession hit, and I think you can't avoid people's feeling that, and have to be sympathetic, I think, to people's feeling that when so many people are out of work, to give 10 or 11 million undocumented immigrants employment authorization when the country seems to be collapsing economically, I think it's too much to ask. But fundamentally, it has to do with people's sense of security, not just security from terrorism, but economic security, social security. And so once those things are clarified, and once people feel secure in their lives, they're much more open to understanding how valuable and important the contribution immigrants can make.
Do you think that the country has progressively done the right things in terms of immigration policy? Like, is it taking too long? Is it too slow?
I think it's a little slow. I mean, I think that I would have liked to have seen a more mature approach, but I'm optimistic. And the reason I'm optimistic is that the country needs this legislation. The country needs undocumented immigrants to become legal, and the country needs the reforms in the work-based, employment-based immigration system, because our country is still just very slowly coming out of recession. And if we're going to compete with the rest of the world economically, we need to do something about our immigration system, because the world is just getting too easy for work and to go abroad and for products to come here.
Stay tuned. When we come back, how Chinatown and Little Pakistan are faring 12 years later. Thanks for staying tuned to a special September 11th edition. Soon after the identities of the architects of the attack were known, there was a groundswell of anti-Muslim sentiment all over the U.S. An area in Midwood, Brooklyn known as Little Pakistan was particularly hard hit. Nearly 90% of Pakistani immigrants identified as Muslim, and many of them fear being swept up in the net of growing immigration raids in the neighborhood. Zyphris LeBrun reports on the community's lingering feelings of mistrust of law enforcement and the ongoing struggle to recover economically after the raids.
U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement, which deals with the deportation, they chartered planes to deport Pakistanis back home.
Mohsin Zaire has very vivid memories of the fear that gripped his community in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks. Back then, he says his paper, Sada-e-Pakistan, was reporting on mass deportations nearly every week.
Many people after 9/11, when the raids were being made, many people told me that they don't go to do grocery, they don't go to their work just because they could be stopped at any point and they could get arrested and they could get deported.
Hundreds were, and nearly a quarter of the estimated 50,000 Pakistanis living in the city, self-deported, moved to other states or to Canada.
The impression was that raids are being made, people are being rounded up, people are fleeing away from Little Pakistan or New York. So when something happened, the news spread like jungle, the fire of the jungle.
This exodus eventually hit the community's pocket. Businesses closed, and landlords that once had waiting lists to rent $3,500 a month rooms couldn't give space away. Years later, the community that once boasted that it was the biggest and most vibrant Pakistani enclave in the United States has not yet fully recovered.
So this is the restaurant whose ownership is changed for the third time in less than a year.
Still, many in the neighborhood remain undaunted and are trying to reinvigorate the local economy and rehabilitate the image of Muslims in America.
There is an organization which is called Pakistani American Community Club. They started to celebrate the 4th of July as a festival. Every year the Pakistani American community celebrate Pakistan Independence Day. So this gentleman, Mia Fayaz, he thought we should also celebrate the 4th of July.
Zahir fears that those kinds of efforts are being undone by recent Associated Press reports that the New York City Police Department identified some city mosques as terrorist organizations. A slap in the face of a community whose majority populace is Muslim.
On Coney Island Avenue, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 mosques are only from Avenue H to Beverly Avenue.
So
like in 8 blocks.
Within 8 blocks, there are 4 mosques.
4 mosques.
What's worse, Zahir says, is the growing fear that members of the community are turning on each other.
I notice there is a distrust between the community members. Now people look on each other, hey man, what are you, who are you working with, you know? They don't believe, sometimes they think, hey, this guy may be working for them.
Despite those concerns, Zahir says the next generation of American-born Pakistanis will be more equipped to deal with such challenges. He thinks their comfort with English and the security of their immigration status will be the keys. Zyphus Lebrun, Independent Sources.
Another community hard hit after the attacks was Chinatown. The neighborhood sits at the crossroads of Lower Manhattan, so when the towers fell, it suffered a devastating economic blow. Over the years, community leaders, elected officials, and business owners have come together, and now the area is making a comeback. I recently visited Chinatown to find out more about this recovery. For years, Chinatown was known as a place for excellent Asian cuisine and a bargain hunter's paradise. You needed a gold chain? You head there. A handbag could be had, as well as sunglasses. But then came the 9/11 bombings, and the hunters stopped their prey.
Immediately after the tragedy of 9/11, it was almost like a war zone. It was quarantined south of Canal Street. There was no vehicular traffic allowed. Even the people who reside in Chinatown, south of Canal Street, had to produce ID cards to get through the police barricades. That was for at least the first week or 10 days.
The garment industry was already teetering on the brink, and that pushed it over the edge. And that alone lost over 20, say easily 25,000 jobs.
It was just like a death knell to the garment industries, because the manufacturers in Midtown weren't able to pick up their garments that were already finished. They just couldn't pick them up.
And so for a little pocket community, it's not just the 25,000 in the garment industry, the indirect ripple effect that radiated out is what's caused the spiraling down of the whole community.
According to a study by the Asian American Federation of New York, from 2001 to 2004, the total number of businesses in Chinatown increased from 4%, and the average wage rose 10%, although the total number of jobs decreased 5%. The report also revealed that traditional pillars of the Chinatown economy that have been primary sources of immigrant jobs were shrinking or struggling. More than half of Chinatown's garment factories closed, retail trade jobs decreased 6%, and 43% of Chinatown restaurants reported lost revenue. To put Chinatown back on the road to recovery, neighborhood officials took a number of steps.
The different community organizations had to get together and strategize and try to work together to come up with solutions. Some of the solutions was forming the Chinatown Partnership. Right? That was the initial thing. And the Chinatown Partnership was indeed a partnership, between the various large community organizations, from the Lower Manhattan Development Corp in terms of grants and funds to help us work on projects like the cleanliness of China, improving the cleanliness of Chinatown, and improving the marketing of Chinatown by way of media.
We did a survey of 2,000 people. If you need help, what was the number one priority? And back then, the number one request was for sanitary condition, that if you want to start, let's start with the bottom first, which is to say that you had to have a decent environment to present to the visitors.
9/11 compounded problems that existed long before the towers fell. So despite the progress, many challenges remain.
We're not totally blaming it on 9/11 because there were a number of symptomatic issues that we need to address. And these are, just like gaining weight or losing weight, it's not going to be overnight, and you don't want to lose it overnight because then you are in danger of affecting your health. So we're taking a very strategic repositioning, systematic approach. The framework is not yet totally understood by a lot of people, but we are executing one by one a strategic framework that was laid out a few years ago.
There have been a lot of improvements in cleanliness, a lot of improvements in working together with the general media. NYC and Company does a lot of promoting of New York, and yet NYC and Company did nothing to promote Chinatown prior to 9/11. Okay, today, yes, we work very very well with NYC and Company to market Chinatown. We are reaching out to the general media and letting them know and getting support from them.
As we speak, this brand new Chinatown Business Improvement District, just the number 66 out of the 67 in New York City, the permanent board just came into being at the end of January this year. And so this is, we're joining finally among the 8 other Chinatowns. We are the 9th Chinatown Tohai Business Improvement District to have a self-help, time-tested, time-proven mechanism to go from there.
Chen and other Chinatown officials are well aware that will take time to put the area on solid economic footing.
The longer term is about how do you sustain yourself, how do you make Chinatown relevant, and how do you make Chinatown sustain long term. That will be here 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and that's the work that's still ongoing.
Still up on the show, trying to get compensation for undocumented immigrants who died at Ground Zero. And finally from us, for the majority of the undocumented immigrants who died on 9/11, there will be no memorial. Their relatives have had to deal with the sadness of the event, plus the added sorrow of never really knowing the fate of their family members. Association TPIAC de New York has been trying to help those families find some closure. Judith Escalona produced this report.
Basically, TPIAC before September 11 was about leadership training for adults. And we have 120 adults that they were receiving training to become leaders in their own community. So we started our program since September 11. A lot of people who were working at the World Trade Center, they were Mexicans, and they started inviting them to receive some help in Tepeyac. Especially those families of undocumented immigrants who didn't have any document to prove that they were there. One of the persons who died, he was filming a video for his family saying, hey, sons, this is my place to work. I work in the 113 floor at the World Trade Center. This is the place, and he was showing all his co-workers. That was the only document that we got to prove that he was at the World Trade Center. No? So they got the federal fund help, and so they are still receiving scholarships and everything. No? Our website was very helpful at that time. The first 6 months, while we didn't get money from institutions and from anybody here, we were giving money to our people and giving their salary just because we were receiving money from the war. So we got like 10,000 people every month visiting our website because we put the list of all those who were missing. Some of them were dead. People in the war were checking our website and they started sending us money, $10, $5, $20, $50. After these 4 years, we started getting those who became sick because they were cleaning the area. So we had like 200 workers, and they were, some of them are dead now, some of them are still sick, and we finished that program not because we wanted to finish. It was the economic recession came, and we didn't get funding to help them. For every case that we could prove, they are receiving help now. But not for those who we couldn't prove that they existed. We know that they were there because we knew the families, that they were really sorry because they lost their loved ones, but we couldn't prove that they were there. So for those that we proved that they were at the World Trade Center, they will be on the list of immigrants who died at the World Trade Center, and they will be at the museum, but not for those who we couldn't prove that they were there.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.